we have to take responsibility for our health, that we're this amazing body which needs good soil, needs good food, needs good internal feeding and watering and good immune support. And that the responsibility starts from within. The body is like a forest, and we can't just look at a symptom. We have to understand the roots to these things. Indigenous cultures and this culture, the old stories of the UK, they would always say that when humans were so out of balance with the earth, that the dragons of the earth would release pestilence and plagues as a form of a medicine for the humans to assimilate, in the hope that they'll learn what they need to do to come back into right relationship with the earth.
Hello and welcome. Many of you will know that it was Chinese New Year last week and that we welcomed in the Year of the Metal Ox. Our sound editor, Mary Chan, is going to share with us a story from her heritage of what this year represents. Before I hand over to Mary, I want to take this opportunity to say a few words about her. She has been our sound editor since episode 29, which was in 2018, and has been incredible to work with. When she joined the team, it brought an ease and professionalism to the show that has made everything we have done since possible. She is meticulous, open-minded, and deeply kind, and it is an absolute joy to work with her. I always recommend her to people starting podcasts, as she also mentors you, if you need it, in having the confidence to share your voice, as well as producing the show and sound editing and offering strategy. She specializes in working with women or women-led organizations, and she is based in Canada. Her website is www.organizedsound.ca, and that's organized spelt with a Z or a Z. And so if you're thinking about starting a podcast, then please do get in touch with her. If you're a listener of this podcast, just know how much of her time, love, and dedication goes into making this a beautiful experience. Over to Mary.
Happy New Year. We are in the year of the ox. And I always have people asking me at the start of each Chinese New Year, what is the animal and what does it mean? My version or interpretation of it is that I remember the story that I was told when I was a little girl about how the animals for the zodiac came to be. The myth is the emperor at the time was going to throw a party, and he decided that the order of the zodiac was going to be based on who arrived first. They had to go through this whole map through mountains and rivers, and it was kind of a trek to get to where they needed to get to. And so the rat was close to first place, but towards the end of the race, there was this river, and it was a fast-flowing river, and the rat had no idea how to get across the river and to win. The ox was coming up next to him, coming into second place, and he saw the river and he thought, oh, well, rat, let me help you. There's no way that you can do this by yourself. It's all about teamwork, so I'll help you cross the river. Not thinking about if he will win or who will come in first place. The ox is all about teamwork and about helping each other out, especially in challenging situations. And so the rat jumped on to the ox's back, and the ox carried him over the river. But because the rat was pretty sneaky and conniving, once he jumped off the ox's back when they reached the other side of the river, he knew this was his opportunity, and he ran as quick as he could without saying thank you and made it to the finish line, becoming the top of the zodiac, the first to finish the race. And so the ox came in second, but the way that I remember hearing it was that the ox didn't mind because that was his personality. He was smart and very reliable, and you can trust him, and that he didn't care for any praise or anything like that. Like I said earlier, he just wanted to be a hard worker and to make sure that he was able to contribute to the whole for everybody to make sure that they got to where they needed to be safe and sound. And so with the year of the ox this year, I feel that it is very, very true and present, because the year of the rat was a rough one. It was pretty conniving to everyone with COVID and the pandemic. But with the year of the ox, it means that we are coming to a cycle where things will be more reliable and not so topsy-turvy, and that the world is going to work together, because without each other, there's no way that we can get through the times that we are in. And so I hope that the year of the ox resonates with you too, and that my little story helps to uplift you for 2021. And so, as I say in Cantonese, 恭喜發財, 身體健康, wishing you prosperity, happiness, and good health for the year of the ox.
Thank you, Mary. As ever, if you want to deepen your journey with our community and learning and unlearning, please do join Presence Collective or become a patron of this show. And now for this week, we have a powerful, informative, and poignant conversation which is centered around immune support as we still navigate this pandemic. I hope that this serves as a reminder that we need to keep supporting our health and supporting our frontline workers. And also just to offer some deep breaths, as I know that many are relieved that the vaccine is here and happening, and others are terrified about the vaccine, and many somewhere in between. We don't discuss that on this episode. We focus on our immunity and the place where holistic and allopathic medicine dance together. My guest this week is Charlotte Pulver, a modern-day alchemist and lover of the waters. Being born into the Pulver lineage of apothecarians, she has a background in natural healthcare, studying and practicing various medical systems of healing for 20 plus years. Her love is rooted in making medicines for people, which she sells through Pulver's Apothecary. It is during her time of studies she came across healing practices which involve water, which sparked and renewed a lifelong journey into her work with water. She has been hosting water ceremonies and pilgrimages for many years for London's communities and around the world. Currently writing a book on London's springs and wells and creating an online resource mapping the springs and wells of the UK. And she helped co-found the Fellowship of the Spring, a group championing water guardianship in the British Isles. Her passion is in community regeneration, inspiring people to seek out their local springs and wells, to restore and tend to them, remembering we are all guardians of our waterways. She has spent this past year supporting frontline workers in the National Health Service here in the UK with immunity support. This conversation explores the themes of frontline immune support, water, and pilgrimage. In this conversation called Apothecary for Our Times, we contemplate the question, what medicines may we use to restore our threads of connection with ourselves, each other, and Earth? We hope that you enjoy this conversation and it connects you deeper to the power of your body and the power of the waters and the land. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. Charlotte, I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to The Future is Beautiful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
I would love for you to share with us in a moment a little bit about the incredibly inspiring work that you've been doing with the NHS frontline staff and what I find so inspiring about it is that when the pandemic started, almost a year ago, that you just took the initiative and started to share your knowledge, to gather information, donations, and made something happen. And I feel that this is something that's so needed in our co-creation of a beautiful future, that we have people that take initiative and just bring something into the world because they feel that it needs to be there, and because they have access to that particular information and they can see where it can serve. But before we go into the what you've done and the why with the frontline, I would love to know where your own interests in health and immunity and the ways in which we can really support ourselves, from amazing tinctures to time in nature and rituals, came from.
I think it's been there since can remember as being 4 years old, just going out with walks with my grandmother in the meadows and picking herbs, and just even at that age of 4 years old, having this instinctual desire that I had to make potions from what I was picking, and that I had to give it to people and say, this is what it's for, even though I didn't have the logical understanding. It's like, you have to bathe in this, or you have to drink this. So
Wow.
I think it was very instinctual.
Yeah, very intuitive, and as if it had come from somewhere else.
Yeah. And then through wanting to understand more about my ancestry, my name is Pulver, which is a pre-Roman name, and it's a trade name for apothecarian, literally for someone who is a herbalist and dispenses medicine. So it's in should we say, the family DNA.
Wow. And when you were young and you were giving people herbs and asking them to take them in certain ways, were you met with people that were supportive and listened to you, or did they think you were just kind of cute and silly? How did that play out?
I mean, at that time of 4 years old, I was only giving it to my family members and their friends.
But even so.
Yeah, let me try and remember. The ones where I told them that they had to bathe in, it's like, put this tonic in your bath and bathe in it. They were really yeah, okay, let's do that. But the ones where when I was telling them they had to drink it as well, they're just like, does she know what she's doing? So yeah, but it's interesting because in indigenous medicine, there is a place for bathing in herbal elixirs and herbal infusions. I came to know that later on in life.
That's incredible. When did you start to study as well as what you knew and kind of confirm your intuitions?
Yeah, no, it's really sweet when I think about it, especially with my best friends, or whenever they had a flu or a cold. I had this innate thing that I wanted to look after them and give them all the goodies to kind of get better as fast as quick possible. So I had that in me from a young age. But then, I mean, this is going to make you laugh. When I was about 15, honestly, this is what propelled me into wanting to understand plants more. Like yourself, as a teenager, it was in the 90s during the rave scene.
I remember.
As a teenager, experimenting with the chemicals which were offered one's way.
I remember.
I found out very quickly I was having very strong reactions to the usual drugs which were, being offered compared to my friends. Honestly, life, death sort of situations where I was like, okay, you cannot take these chemicals. But I was so not going to let me stop from raving. So I'm like, I am still going to rave, and I'm going to find alternative solutions. So then I went into all my herbal books and I started to find there's all these amazing herbs, and note this, legal, which could take you on wonderful, fantastic journeys, which were actually nourishing of the nervous system and supportive, and you didn't leave you with a hangover. And that is honestly how I delved strongly into wanting to study. And I would give the sort of potions, love potions, or is a nice, easy way to call it, to my friends who, should we say, were heavy drug takers and explorers of that realm. And they were like, this works. This stuff works, whatever you're working with.
That's a really good use of that teenage, like one-track mindness to kind of get to the social occasions and have the fun. I mean, that's the best use of that energy that I've ever heard.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I was determined still to rave.
This meant that that kind of intuitive sense of what might work, kind of it took you to the books and then you started studying. And then from there, you went deeper and deeper.
Yeah, so I started studying and experimenting in that realm. And then, like, at the age of 18, I mean, back then, unfortunately, there weren't any university courses where you could just go and study acupuncture or herbal medicine. Back then, you couldn't do that at uni. So I decided to study anthropology. That's what I signed up to do. Didn't last long. Because I was interested in studying medicinal anthropology. I wanted to understand the medical practices of other cultures. And at that age, I just didn't have the languages like, I want to study herbal medicine. I want to practice acupuncture and all these things. I didn't have the language because it wasn't available in the immediate culture at the time. After my A-levels, I did the usual thing of taking a year out and traveling on my own around the world. And it wasn't until I traveled that I kind of had some amazing experiences where I was, especially I was in what they call a part of Tibet, actually. It's a kingdom of Mustang. And I came in contact with, for the first time, Tibetan culture, and something just woke up inside me about, like, I want to study Tibetan medicine. I don't know where it came from, but it came through strongly. It was from helping a family who I was staying with, like their daughter had a really bad burn and I was able to help her. It just came to me. I was like, I want to study Tibetan medicine and I don't want to study anthropology. Why the hell do I want to use this Western empirical perspective on looking at cultures? Something woke up inside me. So when I came back to the UK after a year, I just said to my family, I'm not going to uni. I've got to actually study what I want, which is healing. And so then I went traveling for a number of years and started studying with various healers around the world. And then I came back to the UK and I did a traditional apprenticeship in Tibetan medicine for 8 years in London. And then I also met a teacher called Dr. Rosita Arvigo, who is a profound healer and physician of Mayan medicine. She lives in Belize. I started learning with her for about 5 years too. And then from then on, in the system of medicine, you're always working, learning, endless learning. That's the background, really.
Beautiful. And it's interesting how much is available now, say in places like the UK, where you can learn about these different modalities and have access to treatments, but it really wasn't. And we're talking about not that long ago. And so you really had to go out into the world and go really with an openness to learn and be taught and to kind of understand the preciousness of being let into somebody else's culture and the healing traditions that have been passed down.
100%. Yeah, it's so true. It's only that was 20 years ago. So it's gone through massive change in relation to the knowledge available now, and it's more involved in the mainstream. Like you can go to Westminster Uni in London and study medical herbalism. You can do degrees in acupuncture and Chinese medicine if you want. And now the beautiful thing, which is really important to my work, is uncovering the knowledge of where we are. So the healing plants of where we are instead of looking to other cultures for guidance. And people are wanting to do the ancestral healing work in helping find these connections to medicines which are indigenous to the land here.
Absolutely. The nettles are just back here
Yay!
In England. And I have now spent an entire year in England, which has been unusual for me because spending time in India has always been a big, important part of my life. Yeah, during what this pandemic's brought, I got really into Nettle Tonic, and it made me question, why I've been having all of these kind of green superfoods from the other side of the world when I've got one here. And there's so much here. What are some of the most powerful plants and herbs in the UK? I mean, we have people listening from all over the world, but we're here in the UK as we're talking.
Yeah, so there's one I can talk about, which pretty much grows in every country in the world, apart from the North and South Pole, and that is a medicinal mushroom called turkey tail. The Latin is Tremitus versicola, and if you're new to like mushroom foraging, it's an easy one to spot and a safe one, in the sense of it lays in a family of mushrooms called the Tremites, and none of them are poisonous. Obviously, because I can't visually show you, but if you were to go onto YouTube and like Google turkey tail, and someone would be going through how to spot it. But why this one? And we're talking about immunity as well. It is the most researched, scientifically researched mushroom out of all the mushrooms. It is used in Japan and allopathic medicine in the hospitals. It is given to patients alongside allopathic cancer care. So it is like profoundly amazing for cancer, but also it really helps restore the microbiome, one's gut. It really helps balance it. In Chinese medicine, they call it a Shen tonic. And what I mean by that in simple terms is it helps to house the soul in the body. So it helps you feel at home in your body. So when you first drink it, especially if you've never drunk it before, you just feel quite blissed out and you feel really happy. It's great for stress. We know that in our guts are so important for our immunity. So yeah, it's one of those mushrooms which grows on deadwood. So from November, you'll start to see it all the way up into May in the UK. So it's got a good window, grows on deadwood, easy to get. And what I say to people is put it in NutriBullet. Once it's like powdered up, just put it in slow cooker with water, leave overnight. And by the morning you have like the best tea ever to drink. It's good for like restoration as well. If you just like emotionally feeling rubbish, or like you've come over a virus and you need restoring, that can help you come back from the dead.
I feel like you're talking directly to me. I'm going to go and look for the turkey tail this week.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels, I had a virus during like a month ago, and I had none of the virus symptoms of the coronavirus, but I was really wiped out and I haven't really got my energy back properly since. And I've also been with that doing some gut work, which is also attributing to that kind of tired feeling. And so when you were talking about that, I could literally feel my cells saying yes.
Yeah. Totally. With herbalists, this is one of those mushrooms. We're just so excited when we find it because it's such a treasure chest. And whenever I find out, I say, all hail the turkey tail, because really it's like godly.
All hail the turkey tail.
I love it. Yeah.
As we're talking about immunity and we're talking about Western medicine and what's been kind of called alternative therapies, and we're kind of at this time now where we can recognize the powers and the strengths of both and how they can work together in a more synergistic way. I would love for you to share with us what happened and how this project unfolded last year for you with the frontline immunity support.
Yeah, sure. I've been working with the frontline in this way of supporting them with top quality internal immune support since March 2020. But how it came to be was through personal experience of getting COVID very early on, and just already having that knowledge about what is good for viral pandemics, what is good for respiratory disease, and also talking to like colleagues who were in places like Italy and Spain who had received the viral pandemic, like a month before us. So I was already talking to people, like listening about what their discoveries were and what they've been learning. So I was just kind of had that background behind me anyway. Once I started what I experienced to be COVID, which was breathlessness, extreme pain in the lungs. It's like having thorns in your lungs. That was my experience. And what I've heard from other people who've had it was to take action immediately. And because I'm was so incredibly stocked up, I just, have all the goodies anyway, with my work and knowing how to treat viral infections. I just did certain things, took certain things, and within 48 hours, I was out of it. It was cleared from my system. For 10 days after, I was very careful, really still taking a lot of internal immune support, very careful with my diet and resting to make sure it wasn't going to recycle again, the virus, and hit me again. But it was from clearing that acute phase in 48 hours, it gave me this inner strength of guys, seriously, the panic out there is so immense, but really we do have things which do make a difference and they work. So it was from that. And then also from treating various clients who were in acute stages of COVID. And some of these clients were frontline workers who were on the receiving end of very high viral loads, applying the same protocol. And within 24 hours, calling me up, I'm feeling pretty normal, Charlotte. One of them who said to me, why don't we have this knowledge available to us? And why don't we have this internal immune support available to us? And it was from that one ICU nurse who said that to me. I was like, yeah, why don't you? Yeah, it was just my offering of, wanting to serve in that way was just to be like, guys, there is a way through. And it's not that expensive. And it's immediate and it works. Yeah, let's get on with it. So that's the seed in which it was born from.
As you have been working with NHS staff and doctors and nurses during this time, can you share a little bit from your kind of understanding of what it is that they've been going through?
From an emotional level or health level? Or...
Well, both really. I feel like we live in this time where there's a lot of different understandings of what's happening at the moment. People are getting tired of the pandemic. A lot of people still actually don't even believe in the pandemic or believe that hospitals are empty and nothing's really happening. And this is, a controlled thing that's happening. And whereas there could be all kinds of things as to the origins of the virus and how the situation is being manipulated in order for other aspects of power to be brought in. And that would make sense anyway, because that is just kind of how things work, right? That we live within systems of oppressive power. But what I'm really interested in is if you could give us a little window of reality and compassion so that we can understand what those on the front lines might have actually been experiencing this past year, whilst some of us have been struggling with homeschooling or not being able to see friends or having certain restrictions on our lifestyles. What's been happening in the hospitals from what you've shared from being in contact with so many frontline workers?
I can definitely share about what's been going on the last few months and maybe compare a little bit about what they went through last year. ICU nurses, they said they actually saw and experienced the COVID cases in this country drastically actually going up around Christmas, literally Christmas Day. And they felt it was because, I think it was around the 19th December, especially in London and in the South. It was that was the day that, lockdown tier 4 came into effect or something. So what happened is all the young people decided that they wanted to, quickly all meet up in restaurants or whatever, and they feel that through all those very quick meetings all at once, then, the viral loads increased, and remarkably a few days later, the more huge spike of COVID cases in the hospital and across all ages. Not just elderly and people who are immunocompromised. It's all ages. It's due to like there's been different viral strains around the world right from the minute go, and now we have different viral strains in this country. Back in January, a lot of the ICU nurses were saying, we are at capacity. London is at breaking point. We need the army to come in, literally, to support us, like medical army folk to come in. And thankfully, they did come in, I think, a few weeks ago in certain areas which needed that support. What they're doing now, which is different from last year, is they do feel they have more of the capacity from an allopathic medical perspective of how to work with corona in just the different things that they'll use to treat it, like the antibiotics. But beautifully, a lot of hospitals are taking the brave move to bring in IV vitamin C, for example. I know in Brighton, in the hospital, they're using IV vitamin C. They're giving their patients zinc and vitamin D alongside their other treatment. They're starting to want to open up to the medical research, which was done in America and China, a peer review research of using vitamin C, for example. And a lot of them are going through the most horrendous post-traumatic stress. It's like they went through something so huge last year. A lot of them now confronted with it this year, and the trauma is really beyond real for them. And a lot of them are actually off sick. So it's an issue to do with understaffing as well.
And the tiredness of those that are still able to show up.
Absolutely. And once this is all over, I mean, these people are really going to need a lot of support, both physically and mentally. It's like war, when soldiers come back from war, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and it's been a long time. And so to be in that kind of hypervigilant state, from those that I know, like doctors, one doctor that's a client of mine was saying that for her, because of her spiritual journey, she has an understanding of death that's been able to serve her, and has meant that as she has been sitting with COVID patients as they're dying and their families haven't been there, that she's been able to kind of hold that space, that she's felt that many of the other staff, like in fact, in her experience, it was everyone else on her ward apart from her, had no training of how to hold death. And so we're having to deal with that trauma as well as everything else, and just kind of constant. And now we're talking like month after month after month.
Yeah. That's a biggie. That's ginormous. Yeah.
I just want to take a few breaths of support, and just a reminder to all of our friends listening of honouring what this situation is, and honouring those that are on the front line, and exploring ways of being more supportive in our local communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the immune support, can you share with us what you put together in these packs? And so when it first started, you just reached out and said, does anyone know any nurses or anyone on the front line that could do with some support? I remember tagging a friend of mine who became a nurse and qualified in February of 2020. And then, of course, got straight into COVID in the London hospitals. And so it was very just, you were asking around, like, does anybody know anyone that works in the NHS that needs support? And you had put together these packs and also found some sponsorship and donations so that you could send them out to people. And what's in these packs, and kind of how did you decide? Well, you already shared a little bit around, your own experience and that from people in Italy and Spain at the time. Some of these things are quite familiar now because people are aware of high dose vitamin C and vitamin D, zinc, but it would be really lovely if you could talk us through it, because maybe some people have also forgotten or actually never knew as well.
Yeah, for those who don't know, to learn more what's possible. So obviously as a apothecarian, there's so many things that you could choose, but I wanted to just to kind of go to the the ones which do beyond work in viral pandemics. and can clear viruses quickly and work, especially with respiratory disease. So, and I also really wanted to make it really easy for the NHS. I didn't want to overwhelm them with too many things. So I wanted to get the essentials. So I actually had 6 essentials. So the first one, without a doubt, is vitamin C in the ascorbic acid form. It can come in other forms like sodium ascorbate. Ascorbic acid is the one which just works. Giving that for prevention and how to take if coming down with symptoms anywhere from acute to mild. So what it was is with the immune support pack, they had an information protocol of how to take for prevention and in case of symptoms. They had that knowledge. So the vitamin C, amazing. I mean, it's been known for so long, brilliant for viral and bacterial infections. Before COVID, there's many peer-reviewed papers on how it's been used in ICU units for pneumonia. And then last year in China, they did a randomized control trial of placebo trial against those who were just put on IV vitamin C. The results are clear as light of day. People are just getting better so quickly in the very acute conditions. Okay, so vitamin C is in the pack.
And so this is liposol vitamin C, and better in liquid form, or?
I gave them 2 kinds. The liposomal is for like if you're coming down with symptoms and you want that virus out of you. And why the liposomal vitamin C is it's encapsulated in a fat molecule. And in that form, it's the best absorbable vitamin C on the market. So, and also you can be taking very high doses and it doesn't affect your tummy, your digestion. That's what I recommend if you're coming down with symptoms. And then if you're just wanting for prevention, a very good quality ascorbic acid is fine.
Great. Thank you for clarifying, because not all vitamins are created equal.
No. It's about what they're combined with, which go down different pathways in the body and are absorbed differently. But the thing is, if you don't have liposomal vitamin C, it's okay. Ascorbic acid is better than nothing. And it does work when you're taking in the high doses as well, as to remember that. Okay, so vitamin C is what we have in there. And then we got vitamin D, which has been in the media a lot about the importance of vitamin D. I mean, you'll see that the countries which have been affected the most by COVID are in the Northern Hemisphere, sun-deprived, wintry times of the year. Vitamin D is not just for good bone health, it is essential for good immunity. And it's very protective of the lungs. Again, there's been so much research in the past to do with pneumonia, and patients been giving humongous dosages to help them recover from pneumonia alongside the other support, and it's made massive differences. And very important if you have pigmented skin. If you're not fair-skinned, even more important, actually, I say to people, take it year-round. It's essential.
And this is one of the reasons why there have been higher rates of COVID within the Black and Asian communities in the UK. And a big part of this, from your understanding, is because of the vitamin D deficiency.
100%. Because, last year I think it was like 96% of the doctors who sadly passed away due to COVID were from the BAME community. And, they didn't have socio-economical issues, It's been known for a very long time, but unfortunately it's taken a pandemic to raise this awareness. So vitamin D is essential for everyone to be taking. And there's been so much confusion about what dosage to take. And it's just 5,000 IU a day.
D3 or?
Yeah, so D3, ideally if you can get it with vitamin K combined, it just helps it absorb better in the body. And if you decide that you want to take it long term, which is totally safe and great, it's good to have the K in there. So vitamin D, and then we got zinc. Many people have heard of that. Zinc, it's just amazing for immunity and stopping viral replication in the body, essentially. And then after those, those 3 well-known nutrients that you've probably heard a lot about, I added medicinal mushrooms in there. And I went to the best of the best, what would we call a mushroom expert. It's called a mycologist. His name is Martin Powell in the UK. And he'd already made, by the time I contacted him in March, a really good blend specifically for COVID. And it was a combination between reishi mushroom, cordyceps mushroom, and he had a herb in there, a root called ashwagandha. And the three together, incredible. The ratio is good for antiviral. The cordyceps is incredible for protecting the lungs and lung damage and restoring the body. And the ashwagandha is very good for high levels of stress and calming the nerves. So all those things perfect for people on the front line. And if it, and not just for the front line, when you have such a tough virus, it's just, brilliant for anyone to be taking.
Yeah, ashwagandha is one of my favorite things to just have around anyway, and having like nighttime drinks. And
yeah, I mean, it's brilliant for the nervous system, but I mean, it's come out research that even there's chemical property within it, which is great for stopping the replication of the COVID virus. All this information is on a website that I put together called frontlineimmunesupport.com, and it has all the research on it for those who want to understand the science.
And does it have links to the sources? So if somebody wanted to purchase Martin's remedy that he's put together?
Okay, that's unfortunately the only thing that in this country we're legally not allowed to put up there is what brands we recommend.
Right.
But we can say all we like about what to take. But unfortunately, we can't say brand.
Right.
So no, that information is not on the website. But, from hearing me today, you can find them very easily on the internet. So moving from the mushrooms, then we worked with a brilliant aromatherapist, Maggie Tisserand. So in the 70s, when sort of essential oil medicine was coming to the country, it was like the Tisserand family who really brought it into the limelight. And so I was fortunate to meet Maggie Tisserand during this time. She'd done so much science research into antiviral oils, decades worth of practice. And so she already made a really amazing oil blend, and she called it the Frontline oil blend. And the thing is, when the virus enters the body, it first comes through the nose and hangs out in the nostrils, and before it goes deeper into the body, if it does. And so she'd made this little program so easy for Frontline, or actually anyone to do, is like you literally get the oil, you coat your nostrils, and that's like a kind of protective barrier. And also, if you do have like the virus in you, it's antiviral. But also she included it with these little like really cute inhalers. So you can put drops in the inhaler and like breathe the oils, the kind of aroma deep into the lungs. So the whole thing with that, it was before the Frontline went to work, they coated their nostrils. When they came home, before coming home, they coated their nostrils, and they were able to breathe in through the inhaler all day. So it was working on that physical level, but also the oils are very good for calming the nervous system and mind, and so feeling great emotionally with those oils too. Yeah, and the last thing in our pack, the sixth thing we gave to them was homeopathy. And homeopathy actually has a huge history of being used in pandemics back to the Spanish flu, which 40 million people in the world got. And it was interesting because, as you probably know, with homeopathy, there's like this whole thing of like, it's bollocks, it doesn't work, it's woo-woo medicine. And so I wasn't really sure of how it was going to be received from the NHS frontline. But when I emailed them all, I was like, we can give you homeopathy if you want. And like 70% of them wrote back saying, we want it. That was really interesting. And I was working with Ainsworth homeopaths, like best pharmacists in the world, the Queen and Prince Charles. I mean, they use Ainsworth. They're the suppliers to the royal family. And they'd made a nosode, which is, in quotation marks, homeopathic vaccination, where a bit of the, should we say, the disease is taken and a homeopathic pills is made from it in very dilute amounts. So that was given directly to the frontline.
And so now are you giving these packs still to, have you restarted that process?
So last year, we were running it for 5 months whilst the wave was present. We had a public crowdfunder. So anyone who wanted it within the NHS wrote in, and it was sent to them according to how much funds we had available. This year, we're doing it slightly different in the sense of anyone in the NHS who wants this free protocol, they just email, just say, I want the protocol. It's all the information for prevention and self-treating. But we are doing it slightly different. We're not able to provide the free packs just purely because last year I took 5 months out of my working life to do this. Unfortunately, I can't do that this year. I've got my own practice, which I need to take care of. But I've been able to supply them something which is nearly as good, and actually hundreds and thousands of them are so grateful, is I've negotiated incredible deals with all the suppliers where they get incredible discounts. So they buy their packs with discount codes, which give them a huge amounts of money off. So like 2 months supply of the best immune support is like £40 for them instead of 210 usual retail price.
Amazing.
It kind of gives them that kind of control as well.
So you're not able to give like those links to the general public, but if anybody that is on the NHS frontline that is listening wants to receive the protocol, they can email you and then they will be able to get the links that will give them these discounts so that they can purchase this at an affordable price.
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing. And then, of course, those in the general public are also welcome and encouraged to also take this protocol so that we can all be in a better state of health and protect ourselves and each other.
Yeah, all that information is available on the website. Yeah, if they want to know more about what kind of brands to go for, I kind of explain like what to look out for in relation to quality. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know if you have an answer to this, but I saw somebody just actually at the weekend asking for advice around the vaccine and the alternative medicine that you can take to support the vaccine process. And I wondered if you had any suggestions for that. So if somebody is about to have the vaccine or they've just had the vaccine, if there's anything that they can particularly be aware of to kind of help that process in their body.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was reading a few weeks ago about research to do with immunity and vaccinations and what you can take. And even just with vitamin C and vitamin D, they found that by taking that in like 2 weeks before and afterwards, it makes the vaccine more effective. Is that kind of the information that you're after?
Yeah, whatever you can recommend.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually the question that I'm asked. So vitamin D and C for sure. Scientific research is out there. But then I'm also like constantly asked by people of like, what can I do? What can I take in case of a reaction, which is different. And that is like, you know, take the anti-inflammatory stuff like vitamin C, vitamin D, and diet. Really be aware of your diet around the time of having a vaccination. Stuff which is supportive of the nervous system, the brain, and the gut. So like bone broth, for example. And something called quercetin is amazing. It's an anti-inflammatory, natural.
If people are having reactions or they're having something, they can come and book a session with you and get some tailored support and advice and recommendations for their exact case.
Exactly. I do provide one-to-one support, whether people just are in acute phases of COVID and they just want more support, or they're not in acute phases and they just want something very tailor-made, especially if they have other history of health issues in their life, you know, for sure. Absolutely.
If we remember the world of health outside of COVID, I'm curious as to some of the other kinds of things that you treat through your practice that people come to you with and that you're able to offer support with.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's quite common, like with any sort of work in health, you find your niche. You know, you find like, the love of, you know, what you're drawn to treating. And often it comes through your own personal experience, of course. You know, what you found the most toughest in your life, or, you know, most challenging, and where you've been able to come through it and extract the gold. You know, you want to share that with others. So for me, I guess my niche has been in mental and emotional health trauma. So working with people in internal and physical, like dietary and supplementary, and also what they can do for their own self-care practices, and, you know, radically helping their nervous systems to shift out of whatever states are going on. So that, and then also came quite early in my studies, in my early 20s, of gynae, in the work of womb work. And that came through studying with Dr. Rosita Arvigo in the Mayan tradition. It's a very gynae-centric culture, learning about uterine massage and how to realign one's uterus and how to teach young women and women how to do that and put that knowledge into their own hands of developing self-care practices so they can treat their own gynae symptoms.
Is this through a combination of herbs and plants and tinctures, as well as practices?
Absolutely, the whole thing, internal and external. Yeah, and self-care practices as well. There's, different, doing like castor oil packs and vaginal steaming and self-care massage, that kind of stuff. And then with the self-care practices, working with pranayama is beyond profound for anxiety and depression, from yogic lineage. So I teach that to people, and then other very simple meditation techniques of how people can restore their energy and, just even with grounding, clearing and protecting yourself. And in developing connections with self, but also the natural world.
Hanging out with more yew trees?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. One of my favorite trees.
Why is that?
What its message and the consciousness within the tree, what it holds within it for the planet and ourselves, and how we can work with it. Okay, so like all the trees in this world, they all have their own individual blueprints of like, they're given the blueprint of how long they can live on this physical plane, on this earth. And the blueprint within the yew is actually has the capacity to live and grow forever out of all the other trees. Yeah, like oak trees, they can grow for a while, but actually they have within their blueprint, okay, I'm going to die at this point and pass on. But with the yew, it has the capacity to grow forever if it's untampered by humans and the ecosystem was to stay like constant. So what does that mean? It means this tree is embodied eternity. It is an embodiment of the eternal forces, which is quite a profound thing, actually, to come into physical contact. And so when you work with the yew tree, like energetically, just sitting in its physical presence and like breathing with it, connecting with it, you are coming into contact with embodied eternity. So yew trees can help you remember and come into contact with your own eternal self, which is very important for a lot of humans, because we forget that we are a part of the eternal and how to connect with the eternal when we feel like isolated and disconnected. The eternal, what I mean is what the energy, the consciousness, which is behind everything in your life. In the Gaelic names of the yew of the British Isles, yew means God. So it was literally revered as the God tree, the source. But okay, want to hang out with the source, go hang with the tree, the yew tree.
And do you have a ritual or a practice when you come into connection with a yew tree?
I do, yeah.
Is it something you can share?
I'm trying to think, because there's different like levels to it. I'll just teach one which is very easy to understand. When you're going to visit a yew tree, obviously say hello like you are to a friend, or, to beloved, and you'd like to, you're meeting someone for the first time. It's like, hey, let's get to know each other. So kind of have that awareness before you step under the threshold of going to hang out under the boughs of the yew. Very simple. Meeting, how you meet it. And then, find your place if you want to put your arms around and have a massive hug, or you just want to sit against it. Find a comfortable position. And then it's all about breathing, about learning how to breathe with the tree. What I call it is like allowing the tree to breathe you. And when you're allowed to have that connection happen, radical things of healing and peace can take place. So as you take a deep breath in, you visualize the tree is entering you. So it's like the oxygen you're taking is from the tree. As you breathe in, you just feel the tree breathing into you. And as you breathe out, you are breathing back into the tree. It's as simple as that. But when you really allow yourself to slow down and give yourself full permission to have that experience with your breath and the tree, it's very profound.
Hello. We're taking a short pause from the conversation. On behalf of our team and our community, thank you for being here and co-creating The Future is Beautiful. Much dedication, love, and time goes into the production of this show. We believe in being advertising free in a world that's always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And so we make this show with you and for you, thanks to your support. There are 3 ways you can be more involved, so we can share the vision, wisdom, and creativity here as we explore what it means to be a human in this time. You can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends, posting episodes on social media, and doing iTunes reviews. You can support as a patron by making a monthly or one-off donation of your choice. And with this, you join the Global Patrons group and monthly video calls where we share connection and insight. You get to know the other amazing patrons from around the world, their stories and their work, and you offer direct support to me and the team, as well as being brought into the behind the scenes of creating something like this. It sounds like a lot, but it's as much or as little as you want to get involved in. You can become a member of Presence, our membership collective of care and practice, where we explore how to embody the themes of the podcast with workshops, calls, special events, tree whispers, and powerful tools, practices, and rituals that you can bring into your life. This is open to absolutely everybody as we create an inclusive and diverse space that celebrates well-being as a human right, where we explore together what it means to be creative, courageous, and connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. This is about embodying sacred activism. We love meeting patrons and Presence members and how being part in this way weaves our lives together, as well as making this show possible. If anything from this conversation has moved or inspired you, please get more involved. All information can be found at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. This show really can't go on without your patronage and Presence membership, so please do make it happen. And now, back to the conversation. I would love for you to share with us a little bit around the importance of pilgrimage and ritual, as I have had the joy of being on 2 pilgrimages with you, both across London. Both were beautiful experiences of, on one level, receiving a whole kind of understanding of London, that just on a different kind of historical, factual level than perhaps many pay attention to as they're roaming through a city. And then being with the waterways of the city and being in that space of offering, and being in a group that have come together for that shared experience to walk the sacred ways and to honor the sacredness of the land. It's always a deeply healing and profound experience for me when I join a ritual, and in the experiences that I've had of yours in particular. And I would love in the future, when we gather, to go to more lands and go and explore lands deeper with you, because you have a really beautiful, knowledgeable, and a way that holds both the gentleness and the strength of the experience. Can you tell us about pilgrimage for you and why that's something that you find important, and why you like to gather others for this practice?
Thank you so much for everything you shared there. And I'm really grateful that you enjoyed the pilgrimages that we had in London when we were able to pilgrimage. And hopefully we'll be able to pilgrimage very soon.
We can solo pilgrimage in the meantime.
We can solo pilgrimage in the meantime. That is very, very true. What is it about pilgrimage? I think there's something very deeply magical about it, and also something that we know within our bones. Like we remember, which is ancestral. Pilgrimage is not really setting out to gain anything in the sense of how most of us conduct our lives. Like, I'm going to do this because I want to get that, you know what I mean? But also, it's setting out on a magical quest. And I like creating magical quests for people to take part in, essentially, in relation to why. They're prayer in motion, essentially. Prayer in motion. And when we come into pilgrimage, if we're going on, like, say, a path which has an ancestral connection of like, yeah, we knew that people walked that pilgrimage, we can connect with the past in the present. And wherever we go along the way doing ritual prayer, we can seed in prayers for the future. And it's coming in contact with that, the landscape, and feeding the original essence of what is there thousands of years ago, not just present, with the current power structures, but feeding the original essence. It allows us to wake up the land and say, we see you and love you and remember you, and we'd like to work with you. There's something happens in that relationship and an expression where then we can have really magical experiences, because the land will give us clues or experiences in the moment, if we're open to receiving them. And even if it's not a well-known trod ancestral pilgrimage trackway, you can set off on any route, really, and just with an open mind and heart. And if you want to work with intention, like a prayer along the way, life will indefinitely communicate back to you. So it's like a walking prayer, a walking meditation, a walking dance.
Beautiful. And thank you for sharing that invitation at this time, because it also feels that even as we're going for our walks, and at this moment where we might not be gathering and we might not be traveling far, that we can make our walks a pilgrimage, and we can find ways to connect ever deeper to the land that we're in and to listen more deeply.
Absolutely. And an easy way to work with pilgrimage is like, if you just want help with something, or you just want clarity on something, just before you set off from A to B, you don't have to know what's going to happen between bit A and B, but just at your starting point, just set that intention, that prayer, see what unfolds on your way to your destination of, what thoughts may arise or what experiences you may have. Let nature communicate back to you. And really important, especially in this culture where we're used to taking, it's really important that we give back, we honor and give offerings to certain areas along our route. If you see something, a water, a river, or I don't know, a hill or an animal, and you just want to pay your respects and love, make an offering or sing a song, whatever inspires you to share that love.
And I love song as an offering, that you don't have to have come prepared, laden with things in your pocket, that you can be there and kind of give of the gift of what we can give as humans, which is this beautiful sound that we can make. That's a beautiful experience of sacred reciprocity. And I had one teacher that said, the trees can't sing like we do. They love it.
That's so true.
And if our friends listening did want to bring an offering of physical form, what kinds of things can they offer?
I always say to people, anything which can go back to nature, dissolve back. And even just be really aware of the flowers. If you decide to offer flowers, don't buy short bought ones, because they're invariably sprayed with pesticides and they don't biodegrade very well, and the animals don't like them. But anything which can go back to nature, or even just a piece of you, your hair or your spit, it's from you and it connects to you.
Perhaps even something that you found on another part of the pilgrimage that you can offer back.
Yeah, absolutely. And get creative. Let your heart show you. You want to create something, you want to make something.
And what about some of the more traditional kinds of offerings like tobacco and chocolate? Would you say that they have some of the same issues as flowers, and that they might have other things in them? And
yeah, it's a really good question. Like, obviously, if people want to offer tobacco, which is very much from the traditions of the Americas, you don't want to be using, like, I guess, mother lights. Maybe it's being really sprayed, not brought into this existence with much goodness. been a lot of destruction in creation of that tobacco. Like, I guess things like American Spirit, I understand, or more without pesticides and brought into this world with more care. Yeah, same applies to chocolate, I guess, as well.
Find the most organic, natural that you can.
Yeah. And also then you're supporting those industries which are doing their best to create products which are fair trade as well.
Can you share with us some of the, I guess, the magic that underpins London that some of our friends listening won't be aware of? You're so knowledgeable about all of this. And I feel like for those in London, this will just provide another layer of experience and understanding. And for those not in London, it invites a deeper curiosity to the place that you are in right now, and to understand more of the story of our ancestors and how these urban metropolises, they tend to evolve from something that was once sacred.
Yeah, really, really good question. So yes, I lived in London for 30 years. Currently not living in London now, but
You haven't gone far.
come back every month to say hello. I'll always be saying hello to London and working within London. It's a very special place. So obviously growing up in London, like anywhere else, I wanted to understand more about the landscape and what was there. And I've always had a deep fascination and love of water and springs and wells. In my early childhood, I would want to go out on like adventures of seeking out lost and hidden springs. But I always did it outside of London because I never thought actually that they were in London. But through synchronicity, I was trying to get an address to send a birthday card to a friend, and she lived next to this church, and I didn't want to ask her for a postcode, so I just looked online. This was a church in Willesden, and I went on the website and I saw Holy Spring inside church. In that moment, I had a light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God, of course there's springs and wells in London. Why didn't I even think that? So I went immediately to this spring in Willesden. There's a really old church, probably like built in 900. Back then, you could just like literally walk into the church, not locked, and you could collect the water from the church. And drinking that water is beautiful, and spoke to the priest. We had a good chat about it. It just set this sort of understanding emotion of like wanting to know about all the springs and the waterways that they connect to in London, and to understand London more. And then one thing led to another. I was speaking what I term as my elders, the elders of London, who have been doing all the work for generations before me, of like wanting to understand more about sacred London. And they're just like, said, Charlotte, London is a water city. It sits on the top of a lake, essentially, like a water basin, which we call, what is it called? Like the London Basin or something like that. There's 21 rivers which flow through it and which connect to the Thames. The whole of the Thames, which crosses, the UK from Gloucester, has 50 rivers which connect through it on its passage, and 21 of them are just in London. So that tells you a lot. It was just through my love of exploring and going on quests. I love a good quest and I love finding things, that I decided that I wanted to map out the springs and wells of London, both those which were capped, so not available to the general public, and those which were not capped, and seeing which underground rivers that they connected to. So I created a map which people can have access to if you go onto Facebook, and it's in a group called London Springs and Wells. You can access it there, and there's a huge group of people who just love water and springs and like sharing all their knowledge of the springs. And then just my love of exploration and living in London, it's just about asking the question why. Why is that the way it is? And when you start to ask the why of things, then you find there's a thread, and you can follow it, and it can lead you further back in time to hopefully ancestral knowledge and things which are not spoken today. So, for example, I was hanging out around the Tower of London because I was, checking out some springs around there and visiting the Thames. And I just asked simple questions like, what is it about the ravens? Why ravens as birds? And just asking these questions like, why that? Why the unicorn and the lion? Just why they ask these questions, and then you can go on exploration, and this knowledge then is available to us. So it's by asking the whys of the city that I started to uncover things. And one of the things I uncovered about London is to do with sacred mounds, which you could term as ancestral mounds, places where people would come from all over the country to pilgrimage to, which hold important knowledge. In London, we have 4 mounds, which are ancestral mounds. One is today known as Tower Hill, that used to be called the White Hill, pre-1066, before the Normans came. And that was regarded as the sacred mound of sovereignty of all the British Isles. So very important. People would want to come from all over the UK to come to the sacred mound of sovereignty. On top of, underneath St. Paul's is the sacred mound to the goddess. So it was regarded as a lunar temple. This is like even pre-Roman times. It was sacred mound to the goddess. In Roman times, they built a temple in there to the goddess Diana of the moon and the deer and the hunt. And then in connection with the sacred mound to the goddess, St. Paul's, in Westminster, was sacred mound to the sun, to the god. And then the 4th sacred mound of London is what we term as Parliament Hill today. And so it was coming to understand these sacred mounds, which people would come and pilgrimage to, that, gave me more of an understanding of the city. And when we talk to or pilgrimage to these places and talk to the original essence, not just to the cathedral, which is sitting on top of it, we can start to come in contact with, our ancestral law and our indigenous law, which is really, really important right now on this planet, and helping us heal those threads of connection, of feeling connected, and that we belong to the earth. And we actually are part of everything. So we can feel that, and we can have those experiences even in the city.
Thank you. It took me back into pilgrimage with you, hearing this information. It's so fascinating, the layers of what you might associate, say, St. Paul's Cathedral, which is also around the Bank of England and the city, and that actually that's all resting on a lunar temple of the goddess it's extraordinary.
Totally.
You mentioned springs and water. I would love for you to share with us the difference between drinking spring water to filtered water to tap water, and why we might want to drink spring water and connect with it as much as possible when we can, because we can go to springs and kind of be in ritual and prayer, but many people don't realize that you can, for example, get spring water from local springs quite easily if you go and travel with a big bottle to these places. There are some, for example, in Dartmoor, there's actually a company that will deliver Dartmoor spring water to your house. Some people still drink tap water. And so I would love for you to share, if you just briefly.
Yeah, sure. It's to do with vitality, really. Like, with food, we understand that, food which is organic, biodynamic, which has had a good foundation and is not sprayed with pesticides, is better for us than eating food which heavily, sprayed on and not grown in the best growing conditions, It's the same with water. And because water is essential to all life, then it would make common sense, logical sense of like where that water comes from and the process it's gone through to get to you. Okay, so like I can talk about London, for example, and I'm sure this applies to many cities around the world. So they say that by the time you drink the water out of your tap, it's been processed 7 times. So it's been through it's been through like 7 different humans at least. So it's like, drunk, peed through, processed 7 times that. And a lot of tap water has components in it which cannot be purified out, such as birth control. It's full of chlorine and lots of like pharmaceutical drugs. So we're kind of in the soup of everyone in London when we drink our tap water. Maybe in small doses, that's quite good for us in like being like feeling okay about being in the city. But long term, it is not the best water at all by any means to be drinking on an ongoing basis. It's dead water essentially. And what happens is water, when it comes out of the ground or it's flowing through streams and rivers, it has something which is called structure. You might have heard structured water and dead water. So like water naturally wants to like ebb and flow like in figure of eights and twist around, and it does that naturally when it's like flowing through the landscape. And what happens is with the relationship with the land, it gains this structure and the magnetism of it. And so like when water has been through processing plants and just comes through copper pipes, it doesn't have structure. Essentially is pretty dead. The vitality has been lost and it's gone. It's not able to truly fulfill its purpose in quenching your thirst and revitalizing you as a human at all. And another thing which happens with water, which is from out of the ground, like spring water, is it's full of amazing minerals. It's from that earth. And a lot of people like drinking spring water because it's vital water, it's full of minerals, it's good for your health, but also there's something about collecting your own spring water. It helps you have a great understanding and respect for water and feeling connected to that land of where it comes from.
Becomes a ritual in itself.
Exactly. So yeah, sadly the water in cities is it's dead. It's dead water.
And in the UK, I mean, there are loads of springs when you start looking.
Yeah, there's an amazing amount of springs. Again, you can go onto Facebook. There's an amazing Facebook group called, I think you just type in Holy Springs in Wales and it'll immediately come up. And it's like, I think there's like something like 20,000 people in that group. And then so many people have like got on Google Maps and they're like pointing where all the springs are in like every part of the UK, with a little bit of lore, a bit of history, or just even the right coordinates of how to find that spring. And it's very part of the lore of this country to do with wells and springs. So it's good that is being revitalized and it's coming back into the forefront. It's part of pilgrimage, like the reason, like a big reason why our ancestors went to visit springs and wells, because they need to drink water. Water gives us life, it keeps us alive. So yeah, they're going to want to go along the routes where there's water. But also, water's so deeply healing and you feel so connected when you're immersed in it. We come from water. It reminds us who we are.
I love that when you chose to leave London, you chose the spring that you wanted to live near. It invites us into a different way of understanding our connection with the land that we're in and with the water, and to find out like what might be near us, or even to allow ourselves to move to be in with the water and the land that we want to be with.
Yeah, absolutely. Water sustains you and you feel connected to it, and springs sustain you. Yeah, go out and seek them and find them, or even if you feel like you want to have a move, like see what the water waves are doing along those areas that you're attracted to. Go visit them.
Thank you, Charlotte. I have one more question for you, which is, what do you feel are the collective lessons or kind of unravelings of this time that we're in? Just a little last question there.
Really, it's a juicy one. There's so many. There's so many. In relation to the virus and the pandemic itself, I think it's raised so much to do with how we view the world and our connection to it. I'm seeing this in medicine, for example, and only a pandemic could raise this so clearly for us to see and hopefully evolve for allopathic medicine to be working alongside holistic medicine, wanting to work together because they're both essential. We need them both to work together. With the current mindset in which, especially in the Western culture, are viewing ourselves separate, it's very much come from a reductionist viewpoint of just seeing one pinpoint of something and wanting to control it or sort it out. And so in allopathic medicine, it's very reductionist viewpoint of, okay, you got the symptom, we're going to control it, we're going to suppress it or whatever. And the medicine is very much geared up to do that, okay? And it's brilliant in emergency medicine. But the thing is, with this pandemic, it's showing us that the body is like a forest and we can't just look at a symptom. We have to understand the roots to these things. Because the thing is, viruses are always going to come and go. You know, this virus can replicate forever. You know what I mean? And so if we're geared just to be like, okay, we've got to suppress it, but never look at the roots to the issue, the foundational soil of why this virus is taking root in the way it is, then we're in this reductionist viewpoint that we're not interconnected with all life, you know? So it's just really raised to the viewpoint of how essential it is to treat the whole body and that we have a responsibility in this. We can't just have a vaccination and think it's okay that we can go and have our drive-in McDonald's and drink a litre of Coke and that the vaccination is going to solve everything. But that, unfortunately, is what has been sold by our politicians. We have to take responsibility for our health, that we're this amazing body which needs good soil, needs good food, needs good internal feeding and watering and good immune support, and that the responsibility starts from within. If we don't do that, we're just going to continue this cycle of insanity, literally, on this planet. I see that one massive lesson. And also, like, I hope you don't mind me, I want to talk deeper on this, is sort of in holistic medicine and indigenous lineages of medicine, we always look at the symptoms. What are they expressing to us? What are they wanting to teach us? And so in its most pronounced form, COVID will cause flooding in the lungs. And the lungs are it's the center of feeling. You know, we feel things in our hearts. A lot of cultures, like Chinese medicine, it's well known, it's the center of grief. So it's interesting, especially in our Western culture, where we're so wired out to be in our frontal lobes of our brain and not in our feeling senses and in our bodies, that a virus which has come, which is causing flooding in the lungs, like the temple of our grief, because it's forcing us to feel, you know, this virus has come to force us to feel. We know that a lot of ancient cultures, when we feel, we heal. For a good year, it has forced us to be at home with ourselves and feel all the things we never wanted to feel because we want to be so crazy busy to avoid feeling all the things we just don't want to feel. So I see it as a virus to confront us with feeling, because when we feel, also it helps us connect back to more of our mammalian wiring, which is we're in our bodies and we're feeling, not in this survival mechanism which is kind of built over time of just being on our frontal lobes. And when we're in our feeling bodies, we feel connected to our earth and our world and each other. And one other thing to say on this one precise topic is a lot of indigenous cultures and this culture, the old stories of the UK, is they would always say that when humans were so out of balance with the earth, that the dragons of the earth would release pestilence and plagues as a form of a medicine for the humans to assimilate, in the hope that they'll learn what they need to do to come back into right relationship with the earth. So it's do we see this virus as a medicine, as a wake-up call for us to assimilate and transform and readjust, or we just see it as something that is separate to us, an invader, which we just have to have a war on.
A nuisance that we've got to kind of,
So that's about the inquisitiveness and also taking self-responsibility from the inside out.
And deep respect.
Yeah, deep respect. And the other two things I can mention very quickly is like the pandemic is forced, like, you know, all the politicians like the mantra has been stay at home, you know, physically stay at home. And I just found that really like early on quite profound. I was like, oh my God, that is like, you know, in all the spiritual traditions, like the number one thing is to stay at home and with yourself. And it's given us that enforced retreat of like, okay, staying at home with everything. So the capacity for radical transformation, if we choose to meet it on that level.
Was there one more thing that you wanted to share?
What was the third one? Oh gosh, this one. All right, it's to do with conspiracy theories.
Let's go there.
All right. Understanding why they've been so rife in this time, especially in the Western culture. Like early on, especially when, you know, the pandemic was happening, is there's just so much that we don't know. And there's so much that we'll never know. And we can never know the truth with our minds, with our egos. We can never know. And so I think why conspiracies have been so rife in this time is the human mind does not like not knowing. You know, it's a major threat. And when the mind does not know why something is happening and why, you know, you have to stay at home and, you know, all these things, and you don't have any apparent control over it, the mind will naturally go into a fear place. Okay. It will actually kind of go into trauma symptoms, actually. And what happens is if the mind is not aware of what it's doing and why it's feeling the way it is in the body, then the mind will want to grasp for something which is concrete, which will give it the feeling of knowing what is going on. So hence theories and people like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's going on, you know, because that's what the mind does when it doesn't like not being in the unknown. That's why it was so rife, and it's still rife. Instead, I realized, because I have a background in, you know, trauma, and I understand these things, is when people like coming to me with like sending me information, this is what's going on, you know, and I'd be like, okay, this person's just in trauma because they're not okay with being in the unknown. And invariably, these people are in a very big spin, but not knowing that they're in this deep fear place. So when anyone like comes to me with like their theories, I'm like, how are you doing today? Are you okay? You know, like to approach them with compassion instead of like, oh, fuck off, or like wanting to hit them with my mind to their mind, you know. Because the fact of the matter is we can never, ever know the full picture. No one knows the full picture.
Yeah, this topic it's so tender. There's so much aggression around conspiracy theories. Actually, I find on both sides, like if you don't believe in conspiracy theories, then you think these are just like stupid and like it's, you know, these people are in a cult, they've gone mad, you know, it's like that kind of aggression. And then I find that people that are in those narratives, there's a kind of anger that other people don't understand the truth and don't get what they get. I personally have spent a lot of time with people on all spectrums of that. And I know incredibly intelligent, beautiful hearted people that believe what are labeled conspiracy theories. And I've sat down and I've asked lots of questions. And honestly, where I've got to it is like, it's best just to let go of trying to know the truth.
Totally.
And it's that desire to know the truth. And those of us that are more spiritually minded, we have that. That's, you know, a big part of our spiritual path is a yearning for more truth of ourselves. And then of course that also then connects to like truth of this this world of what is reality and what's not reality, and where there might be kind of other dimensions. And I find that it's so complex because there is a truth in all of the conspiracy theories, just like there's a truth in all of the mainstream narratives. There's a lie in all of the mainstream narratives, just like there's a lie in all of the conspiracy theories. And so when we know that our media isn't this perfect, clear, truthful narrative, then if you know that there's already that there, it's not a big jump to be like, okay, there's this whole other narrative that's not being shared. And it can just get very, very confusing. The only way that I can handle that for my own sanity, especially as someone that's like hosting a show where people come with different ideas of what's happening in this world, and people come to me, you know, in the groups that I facilitate and hold space for with these questions, is what happens if we just can let go of the need to know exactly what's going on, really tap into our intuition, really connect to the land, and really just look at what's happening immediately around us that we can contribute to. And then it doesn't really matter that much, like what the whole bigger narrative of what's happening is, who might be a lizard, what, you know, who might be part of a sex trafficking loop. We can actually just look at, okay, who's around us, what's happening, and then show up in a way that respects ourselves, respects those around us, and respects the land. I know it's deeply unsatisfying to that part of the mind that desperately wants to know what's going on and what the solution is. Yeah, I find what you share about the NHS frontline experience really grounding, that there's been a process of learning and seeing different things and trying different things and embracing more of the holistic medicine, being able to kind of gather data that just didn't exist. So perhaps for those that have more information around holistic medicine, it could look like there's sort of purposeful mishandling of a situation. But actually, when you kind of understand the journey and within those systems and protocols, you can see that there has been a progression and an opening, and that so much has been learnt. And I find that really humbling and grounding. And it's a reminder that as much as we ever hold on to a truth, we constantly have to be open to learn and relearn and unlearn. And it must be the same even, you know, with, say, a herb, like that might be the perfect herb at some time, and then it might not be in a week for that same person, or in a month, or in 3 years. We're always being asked to kind of feel into what's real and relevant right now.
Absolutely.
It does require this whole new way of being, and it's not easy, but I do feel like we're being opened up to that. And I also find it really fascinating when people have a really clear understanding of the whole of reality. I mean, I find that fascinating. So I'm like, how do you get that? Like, how do you know? Because I find it so complex and ever changing and evolving. And I feel like I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think the human mind has capacity to know. We can't know what we don't know. And really embracing the unknown, that we can't know the unknown, then that allows us to step into a wisdom in our heart and in our bodies, like our intuition, and being able to embrace the unknown and learn more deeply instead of being so fixated with our minds and knowing what's going on, because we can never know what's going on. How could we?
Yeah, I don't even know what's going on the rest of this day, like, let alone a whole global narrative. It's why I really feel that the cultivation of our intuition is the intelligence that we need to be cultivating at this time. It's like a super skill, because it allows us to not only create like a sense of some kind of knowing that's like relevant for us in that present moment, and a relationship with uncertainty, like a really healthy relationship with uncertainty, and being open and being able to live our lives in a way where we're literally one step at a time, and we don't know exactly where everything's leading. And that's one of the kind of super skills of living an intuitive life, that it's this openness that you live with, where you embrace what might be possible, and you don't kind of pull it in with rigidity. And at the same time, this cultivating relationship with the land, and what you shared about the dragon, to really take that to heart and to really be asking the question, how can I connect more to this land?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Charlotte. This has been a far-reaching, beautiful conversation.
Yeah, I really loved it. Thank you so much.
How can our friends listening connect more with you and find your work?
Sure. So in relation to immunity and frontline immune support, it's frontlineimmunesupport.com. And then if those just want to connect with me one-to-one with all the other offerings like pilgrimage and ritual and springs, you can find me on Instagram at pulvers.apothecary.
And is there a website as well for that work?
It's currently being built.
Excellent.
So you can find it at charlottepulver.com.
Just because not everyone's on Instagram, so
Absolutely.
they can find a way through.
Good question. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?